Hey, English 11, it's Wednesday, April 15th, 2020, and today we are introducing our first really official text of Realism and Naturalism by Stephen Crane, titled The Mystery of Heroism. So, Realism and Naturalism happens after the Civil War and before World War I. And so we're starting with the Civil War literature, which we thought would be a great transition out of the narratives of enslaved people. And so the interesting thing about Stephen Crane is that he was actually born after the Civil War, but he is the most legendary and celebrated writer on the Civil War, and he did this all by the age of 24. So you might be asking, why is it that a guy who didn't even fight in the Civil War gets all the credit for writing about the Civil War? Well, if you put yourself in the shoes of those Civil War soldiers, they're not really wanting to write about this. They're not wanting to potentially share all the gruesome details of the horrors that they experienced. And so Stephen Crane was fascinated with the soldiers' experience and wanted to give a realistic portrayal of what it was like to be in the midst of all the chaos of war. And so he decided to write about it. So his Red Badge of Courage novel is his most acclaimed novel. I haven't read it myself, but it is definitely his most acclaimed novel. And the short story that we're reading today was originally printed in newspapers in a collection of his work. This is not from the Red Badge of Courage, but it's another example of his Civil War writing. Stephen Crane was incredibly solid at vivid imagery and offering the common soldier's perspective of the chaos of war. He was so good at it that many soldiers who didn't realize his age believed they had served with Stephen Crane. They're like, oh yeah, I totally remember him from my regiment. So that's how good he was and so realistic. And when he finally became a war correspondent in his 20s, after writing these stories, he was relieved to say that, yeah, what I wrote was true. That's what my experience was. So he used stories and letters and knowledge that he had after studying the war to write his fiction, and then realized later that it was true. Unfortunately, this legendary writer, who became famous and so talented so young, died at the age of 28 of tuberculosis. And so he's incredibly young, but some of his writing has gone down in history as some of our most vivid examples of what the Civil War was like. So today, in a separate video, I'll be reading A Mystery of Heroism out loud. This is a longer story, so we've cut it down. So it's just an excerpt. We've kept it to the details that we want you to be exposed to and just the key points of the narrative. So just know it's originally a longer story, and this is a more manageable excerpt. As I read this to you, or as you read it on your own, I want you to be looking for three things. A meaning of the title, The Mystery of Heroism. Why did Stephen Crane title this story that way? Examples of irony, so situational, dramatic, and verbal. Not saying they're all three going to be present, but you should always be on the lookout for them. And then finally, just like in Try A, trying to determine if it's a realist or naturalist story and defending your answer with themes and evidence from the text. So if you think it's a realist story, I want you to support your answer with textual evidence and where that connects to one of the themes of realism. You'll be reading the story and then answering these short questions in a Google form, which will be put into the gradebook because this is essential practice for the exam and for the course. Okay? All right, so that's what you need today to be prepared. So to get ready today, you can have this slide open, the reading open, and then maybe have your notes out on both irony and realism and naturalism to be analyzing as I read the story out loud. If you have questions, email your teacher or join their office hours. I think that's it. All right, so click on the next video to get the reading.